will record the meeting, as I told you.
Got it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad to invite you, to welcome you to this short seminar, Sunday afternoon. We are very honored and very delighted to have Lucy Green and Andrea Sangiorgio with us. This started as a more informal event because it's on informal music education, but in fact we decided to open it up a bit. And it's the first seminar in a series of 3 web seminars we are going to have this year to celebrate the 30 years of the Department of Music Studies, Ionian University. The 20 years of these 30 years, I'm working here, so I'm delighted. And Mitsia Koyunoglu, my colleague, who is a younger colleague, let's say, in music therapy and inclusive music education. So the topic of this seminar is informal learning in the music class. And we'll have 2 great colleagues and scholars. Let me introduce you both briefly so that I don't interrupt the discussion in the middle one. Lucy Green is Professor Emeritus of Music Education. She was my dear supervisor and tutor in the MA and PhD studies at Ionian University, at Institute of Education, University of London. Her research interests are in the sociology of music education, specializing in meaning, ideology, gender, popular music, inclusion, equality, informal learning, innovative pedagogies, and the lives and learnings of visually impaired musicians. Lucy led the research and development project Informal Learning in the Music Classroom within the British movement Musical Futures, and this work is now being implemented in schools across the UK and in Australia, Canada, Singapore, and parts of the USA, Brazil, Cyprus, and other countries. Her recent research took that work forward into instrumental tuition. She has written 6 books and edited 2 books on music education. And she has done an impressive and very influential work in music education. Andrea Sangiorgio, our second speaker, is Professor of Elemental Music Education at the University of Music and Performing Arts in Munich, Germany. He studied piano and musicology in Italy. He completed Orff Schulwerk studies at the Orff Institute, University Mozarteum in Salzburg, Austria. He holds a PhD from the University of Exeter in UK on children's creative interaction in group work. He is an active music teacher, educator internationally, focusing on elemental music and movement education, group improvisation and musical creativity, and cognitive aspects of music learning. So we will start with Lucy's presentation on learning styles and learning strategies, things to watch out for in the informal music class. Lucy?
Thanks, Zoe, and thank you again
for your presence here.
As I say, it's a massive pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's lovely to meet students and colleagues of yours, and I've designed this presentation for masters and undergraduate students, and I'm hoping that we can have some discussion as we go through, as well as discussion afterwards. So is that okay if people, what do people do if they want to say something? Put your hand up or just shout, or what do you think?
Whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Okay, so maybe just...
So we have both.
Have either, but can you chair it then, Zoe? Because I can't see everybody because I've got my paper in front of me. So, but anyway, let's see how it goes. So as Zoe just said, the paper is called Learning Styles and Learning Strategies. Things to listen out for in the informal music class. So what can we hear when we facilitate ear learning? First of all, in notation-based instrumental lessons, and I'm talking here about the one-to-one classical instrumental lesson where you have one teacher, one student, and usually they're accustomed to learning by reading notation. And in one of my projects, I used ear playing, devised from informal learning practices in this scenario. And the point of doing this was to increase listening skills. And secondly, to introduce pupils to an approach to oral learning that they were not familiar with, and also that their teachers were generally not familiar with. Now, I'm going to play you some examples, and these are all from children aged 13 to 14. This was from the beginning of the research, but later we used the same strategies and collected data from children aged from 7 up to adult learners. So the task was that each pupil, just on their own with one teacher, listens to a kind of slightly funky track of music, and then they listen to just the bass line on its own. It's a riff which is repeated many times. I don't know if you all know the English word riff. Shout if I'm saying something that you don't know. It just means a repeated, like an ostinato, but in funk or pop music. And then they were asked to just see if they could find the notes by listening. So the teacher doesn't tell them where to put their fingers or how to make a sound with their lips, doesn't show them any notation, just leaves them to listen and play. So when I was listening to the recordings of the children, I began to notice some children approached it one way, other children approached it in a different way, and others in a different way still. And I noticed 4 main ways that I could categorize the approaches. And it's very important to know that these all are recordings of the very, very first moment of each child's attempt to copy the riff. So it's their first spontaneous response to the task. So I'm going to play you my first example, and I'm going to ask you how you would describe this. If we listen to what this child's doing, how would you describe his approach? He's 14 years old and he's playing the trumpet. He's been playing the trumpet for 2 years. Here we go. So I don't know if you want to have a discussion or if it's too difficult on Zoom, but maybe people could say some things about how you would describe what he's doing. Yes, Sophia.
Hello. Oh, do you hear me? I heard the reverb.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got you now.
Great. So I noticed in the beginning that, of course, since it's his first time, he was like at the same time listening and trying to play the riff on the trumpet.
That's right.
Oh, so actually that was a good try, because he tried in the first place to understand the rhythm. He didn't really care about the notes, but still he managed somehow to play the right notes a little bit. So I noticed first, like, he focused on the rhythm, and afterwards, because the riff was repeated, he was trying to understand like the intervals between the notes and little by little catch like the pitch.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. He's very good at the rhythm, isn't he? He has a really excellent rhythmic sense. Pitches, in fact, there are 3 pitches in the riff, but after a while he just settles on 2, and he seems then happy to just play 2 pitches perfectly in time. I called this the impulsive approach, or the impulsive learning style, by which I mean that he starts to respond to the music impulsively and immediately. What he doesn't do is he doesn't listen to it first. He just, as soon as the music starts, he starts playing. So that's why I call it impulsive. Right, let's move on. The second student, this is another boy. He's playing the clarinet, and he also has been playing for, pardon? He also has been playing for 2 years. Now, this is his approach to the same task. So, how would somebody volunteer to describe that approach? Anybody? Michaela.
Yes. I noticed that he paid more attention to the pitch this time and less on the rhythm.
Yeah, he was very good on the pitches, wasn't he? And what else did he do? Before he started to play, what did he do? Vasilis.
Hello, good evening to everybody.
I'm sorry?
Good evening to everybody.
Yeah, he listened, didn't he? He listened first.
Well, yes, first he let the music play on for some time, and then he tries to imitate exactly the bass riff.
That's right. And he also, if you just listen again, listen to what he does with his clarinet, the very first thing that he does. So he plays up a little scale, then he's looking for the note, he recognizes the note, and immediately he then uses that as an anchor. And I call this the practical approach, or the practical learning style, because he is already, in fact, he is developing what we might call a practical strategy. So now the third one, you'd need to see him really. I'm going to put it on because it was a long time before he even starts playing at all. So I'm going to put it on in the background whilst I talk, because he was so shocked by the task of being asked to listen and play without notation that he just didn't know what to do. And he was looking with his eyes for the notes like this, and he kept on picking up his trombone, putting it to his mouth, and then shaking his head and putting it back down again. And you'll hear even the riff is doubled at one moment, but it's not him playing. Then you'll hear what he does. I'm trying to encourage him. Okay, don't worry. You can find out the right notes by playing the wrong ones, you see. Have another go. Once you've got the first one, you probably know the others. So how would anybody describe this approach to the task? Anyone? Sophia?
Hello again. I wanted to give space for maybe someone else to answer, but I will take the chance. So if anyone wants can add to what I'm going to say. So one can assume that he probably is a very highly structured, educated, probably child, because he really needed the notation so that he can play. Or maybe he wasn't very, like he haven't ever practiced much playing by ear and trying, or even more possibly he was afraid that he will make a mistake. So that could be like not exactly a denial way, but like a fear of trial and error. Maybe something like that.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think indeed he had never played by ear before, and neither had the other children, except possibly Ben, the child with the clarinet, told me he had sometimes tried to play by ear, and this might be why he had a practical approach. But this boy, he'd never played, none of the children had played by ear before. And he, as you said, he is very worried about making a mistake. When I told him he's going to learn to play by ear, he said, later he told me, his first thought was, that is not going to happen. He had never understood that it was something that was possible to do. Vasilis, please say, come in.
Yes, a little question, if I may.
Yes.
All right. Did the children do all these things, this experiment in front of other fellow students or in private?
I'm afraid your microphone is very boomy. Zoe, could you repeat the question back to me? I didn't quite get it.
I also didn't get it. Vasily, can you try again, please?
Slowly.
Well, maybe something is wrong with my mic. Let me check it out. Okay, I'll try to repeat. My question was, will the children asked to do this in front of other fellow students or in private?
In private, absolutely. Now, later on in the seminar, if there's time, I want to play you some examples of the children doing this in groups. But this was in what we call the instrumental studio lesson. So there's just one teacher and one student, no other students. And some of the time I was the only teacher in there. Sometimes their other usual teacher was there as well. So yeah, because I think you're asking that because it could be embarrassing, couldn't it? And nobody wants to embarrass children, but it was just private. So I think he was scared of the task. He didn't realize that this was something possible to do. And he just went for any random note because I was encouraging him, just play something, don't worry about it. So he just played random notes that were disconnected. And we have an expression in English which is called a shot in the dark. I called this the shot in the dark learning style because a shot in the dark is when you have a gun and you can't see anything, but you shoot in the hope that you might reach the target. And that's kind of what he was doing. And then this is my fourth example. This is a girl. Also, she's been playing the piano for 2 years, and this is her response to the task.
Is it the same note? Is the third note the same as the first?
Yeah, try that.
Does it just...
Yeah.
Is it just the same notes twice? Okay.
Until that bit.
notes 3 times. Okay.
I don't know if you can hear very well what she's saying. Can you hear it? Zoe, can you hear what she's saying? So she's saying, is it the same note twice? Is the first note different from the second note? Is it the same note 3 times? This is her approach. So how would anybody describe this? Elsa.
It seems that she's able to recognize what she's hearing, she's listening to, but it seems that she's maybe more nervous, but she's being analytical before she starts playing. Exactly. Did she end up playing the riff at the end, the bass line?
She did. They all did, actually, even the one who had the shot in the dark approach. And if there's time, which I doubt, but I can play you some examples of what happened with each child as we progressed. There may not be time, but you're absolutely right. I agree with that. I called this the theoretical approach because she seems to want to have an understanding of the music. As Elsa said, she's analyzing the music. She wants to have a cerebral understanding of the music before she plays a note. And also, in her case, she wants the reassurance of the teacher. So possibly she wants to make sure she's not going to make a mistake, which would be like the first boy, a slight fear of error. Now, as well as these 4 what I call learning styles, so that is to say, the impulsive learning style, the practical learning style, the shot in the dark learning style, and the theoretical learning style. There were also, out of 78 students, we collected data from 78 different students, as I said, aged between 8 to, actually the oldest one was 80 years old. Amongst these, the 10 students went straight to the first note, which was a D, without trial and error, without theory, just straight to the correct note. Now, that might have been a coincidence, or it might have been evidence that the child has what we call in English usually perfect pitch or absolute pitch. So they hear a D and they know where a D is on their instrument. We would have to do a different experiment to find out if that was perfect pitch or not. But something I found interesting was that of the 10 students, 2 of them were classed as impulsive learners, 4 of them had the practical learning style, and 4 of them had the shot in the dark learning style. None of them were theoretical. So, in other words, supposing they did have perfect pitch, it wasn't an advantage for them because 2 of them were impulsive and 4 of them were shot in the dark. So that's something that someone could do another experiment on if you're interested. I'll just share my screen with you to show you. Can I share my screen? No, I don't know how to. Sorry, I've lost.
From the share screen button in the middle one, the green one.
Oh, yeah, got it. Share screen. Share. This is just the, oh, now I can't move it down. Out of 78 students, we collected these with my colleague Maria, oh God, I forgot. Yeah. No, Maria.
Varvarigo.
Varvarigo, yes, sorry. Your pronunciation of the Greek is...
Yeah, it's very Greek.
I call her Varvarigo. Varvarigo, I call her Varvarigo. Okay. So she collected the data, the rest of the data, and we played these examples to several independent judges, and we had everybody to tick boxes. And it was categorized into this. 7 of the 78 students were classed as theoretical. 18 as impulsive, 23 as practical, and unfortunately 32 as shot in the dark. And the shot in the dark category is the one I think which means that the students are totally unfamiliar with this and totally, in English we have a word flummoxed. I don't know if you can translate that, Zoe. Flummoxed.
Μάλλον χαμένοι.
Yeah, these ones, the shot in the dark students, completely flummoxed. And even the impulsive ones sometimes didn't have much of an approach. And the 10 who may have had perfect pitch, none of them were in the theoretical, 2 of them were impulsive, 4 were practical, and 4 were shot in the dark. So that was well spread around. And these are the instruments: piano, flute, recorder, clarinet, saxophone, violin, cello, guitar, trumpet, trombone, and euphonium. And again, we had, of course, more piano students and very few brass students, but the instruments were spread across all the categories. For example, piano and woodwind students were in all 5 of the categories. Strings were in all 4 of them. So it didn't seem to be related to the instrument that they were playing. I'll stop sharing now. And of course, the learning styles are not always clearly separated. And in particular, there seems to me to be some connections between the impulsive and the practical on one hand. They kind of go together, and the shot in the dark and the theoretical on the other hand. But generally, children who fell into the impulsive and practical learning styles achieved success more quickly than those in the shot and the dark and the theoretical ones. Now, before I finish today, we're going to talk about why is this interesting, or if it is interesting to music teachers. I find it interesting. Whether music teachers can learn anything from this. But before we do that, I just want you to hear some of the examples of the children doing exactly the same thing, but this time they are in small groups in classrooms. Okay, so in this case, they've not been given a track with a riff. They've been allowed to choose their own music. And I'm going to play you an example from a school in London. This is a group of boys, again, aged 13 to 14 years, and there was no teacher in the room. I left the recorder in the room, and they did give me permission afterwards to use the recording, of course. And they're at the beginning of their second lesson. They have lessons for 1 hour a week. And well, let's just listen to it, and maybe you would like to tell me again what you hear. Anybody like to volunteer what you can hear there? Sophia.
Did you say this was like their lesson of the day?
I'm sorry?
Did you say that this was the lesson of the day? They had like to play all together?
That's right. They had to choose their own music.
Mm-hmm.
Any music they want, except music with violent, sexist or racist words.
Oh, okay.
And then as a group, they play the music and they learn. The teacher doesn't tell them what to play or how to play at first.
Oh, so they tried to recreate one song that they decided to recreate, right? but with different instruments all together at once.
There was a guitar, a piano, and a lot of hand percussion.
Okay, so mostly I heard like the piano,
Yep.
and in the background, I was hearing like different kind of instruments, but they weren't in sync. They were probably trying to find it.
Everyone was doing something else, right?
Yes, everyone was in their own world.
They weren't working together, yeah.
Yes, they were trying at least. But mostly, like the piano had a melody that were like mostly repeated. But the rest of them, especially in the beginning, I thought that it was a very bad tuning orchestra.
Yeah.
They couldn't make it.
Very bad. And if there was more time, I would have played you the track that they were copying. But the boy on the piano, he was the only boy in the whole class who had ever had an instrumental lesson, and he wasn't playing anything to do with the track that they were supposed to be. It was just something he made up from his piano lessons when he, so in other words, they weren't focused, right? They weren't working together. They sound like they're unfocused. Right, so now this is what they are doing 10 minutes later. I was in the room, I went in, I came back. No, I got it from the tape. This is what they're doing 10 minutes later. Actually, I need to tell you that what the piano is doing now, he is listening to the recording, and the notes he's playing now are the same as the recording. So he's copying. So what do you hear now? Anybody? Be brave. Panayuta, you look like you are going to speak, so please speak.
Yeah. Yeah, they're playing a Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I'm sorry.
They seem to have started to actually understand what they're listening and trying to make sense
I
with
agree.
each other.
I agree. They are, they're working together, aren't they? They've got the CD in the background and they're playing in time with each other and with the CD. And you can't hear it very well, but the boy playing the piano has the pitches. There's a drum being played, and they also stop and they are discussing what to do. What should we do next and who's doing it right? Did anybody notice anything else at all? Okay, I'm going to come back to that because we're running out of time. But first, I just want you to play. This is what they did at the end of the lesson. So this is about 40 minutes after the first track that you heard. What track is it? Track 4. Here we go. So what do you think now? Michaela.
Yes, obviously they have made a huge progress. We can now hear many instruments playing, the pitch is right mostly, and the rhythm is also right.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how well the sound is where you are, but I can just tell you there's a boy, he's playing with soft brushes on the side of a drum, and he's going getting louder and louder. There's a boy with sticks on a drum, and he's getting louder, and then at the right minute he goes boom, and then the piano starts, right? And there was some other percussion and a little bit of singing, which you may not have heard. So in other words, they did progress. And one of my main questions, which we haven't got time for today, but the questions that I ask is, how did they progress? And also, what were they gaining by doing this, if anything? Vasilis, did you want to say something? We can't hear you.
Sorry, mic was off. I was saying that I felt that they were much more involved into this.
Yes, I can tell you now that the enjoyment levels of this were extremely high. The kids absolutely loved it. Even some very disaffected children totally changed when we did this. They got engaged. The teachers were astonished. Of course, the teachers were afraid. To begin with, it sounds like they're not doing anything. They're not doing their jobs. But when they saw very quickly how much motivation the children had, the teachers changed their minds. But before I go to my final comments, I just want to play you one of the tracks I just played before. I want to play it to you again because there's something else very interesting going on here with the relationship between the drum and the piano. You heard it before, you may have noticed it, but listen again. Anybody like to say whether you notice anything? Sophia.
You were right. There is something to notice there, that they like communicate, and also like they get the rhythm from each other. Like the piano got, I don't know who got it first, but probably like the piano got the rhythmic pulse, and then also like the percussion tried it out. So they tried to synchronize it. And of course, at the last recording, we saw that they were very synchronized. So that like was it the point?
That was the point. And very interesting, because I noticed that, and then I started noticing the same thing with other groups. And I'll just play you one example of another group. And what happened in so many groups was the person playing the drums, to begin with, they would play the rhythm of the melody or the vocal part. And then after about one lesson, 2 lessons, without the teacher telling them, they began to listen harder, and they realized that that's not what the drums are doing on the recording. And they started to play the drum part. I think I've just got time to play you a couple of examples. So this is a different school, and you'll hear at first the drummer seems to be playing a beat, but then she changes to playing the rhythm of the vocal melody. So what is it? Track 6. Okay, track 6. folks, that was the wrong track. I thought it was wrong. This is the track.
Wait, put it back on the episode. No, I think that's my phone. In TV or something. I'm going on. I don't know how to play. Did you place the words? I'm not. It's there. Where? Oh, right. Like a few years ago.
It's a clear example, right? She's playing the rhythm of the melody line. And there's many other examples of this, but I haven't got time. I'm just going to play you that same group 2 lessons later, and you can hear she's understood what function the drums have. Right, there's a lot to say about this, so much to say, and I've got many more examples, but the thing is, you heard in both groups this same process happening. So I'm just going to jump now. I've got 1 minute left to my closing thoughts. Oh, before I say my closing thoughts, though, I don't want you to go away with the idea that the teacher does nothing. The teacher's job is to set the task going, facilitate the learning. And instead of what we normally do is we say, this is the music you're going to learn, this is how you're going to learn it, this is what you're going to play. No, that's wrong. No, that's right. In this way of teaching, we say, you choose the music, you choose how to play the instrument, you choose how to organize your group or how to approach the task. And then when the children have started, then we come in and then we give them guidance. It is not about giving them no guidance. It's about listening to them. So my concluding my concluding comments are that I think the main message that all this carries for teacher is that we can only benefit from realizing 3 things. 1, there are many different ways to acquire musical skills. 2, our students may not naturally learn in the way that we ourselves learnt. So if the notion of musical learning styles is at all robust, that means everybody has one or more learning styles which are to do with their personality, their background, their experience. Now, some learning styles are more effective for learning than others. And if all of us teachers assume that every student learns the way we learnt, then we are not going to help the students who have different learning styles from ourselves, right? Or different learning styles from each other. So to repeat, 1, there are many ways to acquire musical skills. 2, our pupils may not learn the way we learnt. So 3, and most importantly, I think, we need to listen to our students. We need to listen to them in more ways than one. We need to listen to their views, listen to their music, and listen to them playing and working alone and together. And we need to respect them if we are going to teach them to our fullest capacity and their fullest capacity. And we have run out of time, so I will leave it there. And I'm looking forward to hearing my colleagues' presentation.
Thank you very much, Lucy. It was wonderful to to listen to all this so concretely and structured, and a lot of food for thought how our role changes as music teachers, and how the concluding note, how we need to listen to the students in many, many ways, and to see them, to observe them, how they learn and how they work together. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for your comments too. Very helpful.
I think it's time to go to our next speaker, Andrea Sangiorgio, and then we'll leave the discussion for later. Final general discussion. So Andrea, we are listening to your presentation on teaching learning strategies and practical activities for fostering collaborative, creative learning in elemental music education.
Okay, so I will do this. I will just share the screen directly. I hope you can hear me well.
Very well.
Okay, good. So it's more or less 30 minutes. Is it okay for you, Zoe?
Yeah, fantastic, yes.
Okay, so this presentation is based on an article which already published in the Hochschule International Journal. It's about group work, creative group work. And so my research and my activity as a teacher has been focusing for the last actually 20 years or more on creative learning in the group in music. I work with children a lot, with primary school children, and I'm showing you here some of the strategies which I employ and which I actually refined through the research study and my subsequent activity about how to best foster creative group work. And I want to show you some things in some videos as well. So the first thing, creativity in group learning can be often complex and messy and unpredictable, and can represent a challenge for the teacher who actually wants to plan for them. So I illustrate here a possible pedagogy of creative group work applied to elemental music education. In short, elemental music education is music with children, with beginners, I would say, because we also work with adolescents or with adults or in special populations with special groups or in other contexts as well. So it's not just children. And based on a sample of elemental composition practice, I introduced the major steps of the group creative process, from the preparatory and the modeling phases through the small group work phase, up to the presentation of the outcomes and the reflection and feedback. The aim is to provide an outline of relevant pedagogical strategies for planning, implementing, and evaluating collaborative creative activity in music and movement dance, because elemental music education has to do with dance as well. So in the preparatory phase, how does it work? Or what did I learn from my own practice and the practice of other teachers in the Hochschule world? So the first thing is a warm-up. So at the beginning of a session, I'm thinking of sessions which are 45 to 60 minutes long. The group needs to get there. You may use a ritual activity, a movement game in pairs, a song, or any kind of activity which brings them to an optimal level of physiological and psychological arousal and in contact to each other. Often I begin with synchronization activities such as dancing to rhythm music, so as you see here. This is the research group. The research was carried out in 2013-14. But I have similar images of things I do still today. In any other cases, I might begin with rhythm patterns. So Edwin Gordon, music learning theory. So rhythm patterns with voice and movement or body percussion. Anyway, something energizing, moderately activating, unifying for the group, possibly enhancing physical, cognitive, emotional, and relational presence. After this initial phase, I introduced the theme or the idea. This phase may include direct instruction and reproduction of models offered by the teacher as a starting point for the later creative phase. It could also be important to introduce here some moments of improvisation or invention, individually with a partner or within the whole group, which stimulates children's imagination and their personal connection to the theme. The goal is here to provide impulses, build up or reactivate relevant information, develop skills, concepts, and embodied ways of thinking in relation to the guiding idea that has been worked with a group. And so for this presentation, I chose to describe one of the activities which we have realized with children, with a group of children in the research study. So you can have an idea of how different phases, how these different phases may look like in the creative process. It's actually an example where we use a sort of graphical notation, but we also work a lot in the way that Lucy was explaining now. So we worked here, the example I'm analyzing here is on the theme of metrical structures, meters, actually, alongside other. So, and we worked on this for 5 sessions over a period of 7 weeks. So in portion of 10 to 20 minutes each time. We also did other things in parallel, so singing and playing instruments or improvising, a lot of group improvisation or composition in pairs or groups of 3. I'm presenting here a number of videos relating to this extended creative process. My goal is to exemplify how the phases of a creative process can be organized, what teaching strategies are involved in each phase, and what kind of outcomes were produced in the individual phases. And then, so what I'm saying is I'm doing 2 things at the same time. I'm showing you an example, but the most important thing I'm doing is actually saying what are the strategies or the organization strategies for the teaching sessions about supporting group work. And the idea is G is one of the children who has a new idea, had a new idea. So while working with rhythm patterns, with body percussion and voice, the structure tum tum cha cha. So I read this. So different movements synchronizing on a pulse. And he showed this to the group. And then we have now a video of individual exploration of different movements for this metrical structure. So we have this basic thing, which is to be found in many places in music, doom, doom, cha, cha, and how you can play it with your body and with movements. And I show you the video. Zoe, if it doesn't show well, you tell me, okay?
Yes, yes.
So this is the child who invented the thing, and you will see that he perfectly differentiates between the 2 movements. The other are not doing it as well. They're synchronized, well synchronized on the beat, but, oh, sorry. I have to go back. Excuse me. Sorry, again. Yes, yeah. Can you see him here now? Clapping and stomping. Okay, so the other children are synchronizing on the beat, but not yet. They didn't get yet the doom doom cha cha. Huh? So we go on, and so we teachers. I was teaching with a colleague. We were showing them how to find 2 possible movements for the rhythm structure, tum tum cha cha. And so we have a group work phase, and what I'm showing you now is the solution of 2 children, and they did it in pairs. We find that cooperative learning in creative music making is particularly important, and this is the result, the outcome. That's both 6-year-olds. And then we did it with a group. and we add the voice. Okay, so in the subsequent session, I gave the idea of working with this other structure, toom, 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 cha, cha, cha. Children explore different ways to perform it with movement and body percussion. This is now the solution of these girls. This is a girl, a 6-year-old. Look at the group, how the group synchronizes with her and supports her when she shortly loses the beat. So look at how the group is carrying her. Again, sorry. Why is it? Okay. Cha, cha, cha.
Costanza, dimmi quello che via.
Okay. After this phase of this initial phase of individual composition, sharing the results, we asked children to put together the respective ideas, possibly adapting them wherever necessary. So they went on trying out further ideas. And in the third session, I came up with this idea. Toon, 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 cha, cha, toon, 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 cha, cha. So it's a 5. The new element is that we now graphically represent, you see here on the structure of the movement by using 2 different kinds of objects, castanets and tambourine sticks. We worked as a group, imitating ideas offered by children and repeating them 4 times. So, and here are the ideas of 2 children. So somebody has an idea, and this is Sarah. She gives the idea.
Filippo, guarda. Bello.
He's got an idea. Okay, so you see how we try and bring the meter into movement, as is actually a sequence of beats on the parts, which are differentiated with movement or later on with music on the instrument. So modeling the creative group tasks, this is a very important phase in the process. Before having children work independently in pairs or small groups, it is crucial to ensure that they build a conceptual model of the creative task. And the first thing is modeling and explaining the task. The teacher shows the idea to be explored, giving 1 or more examples about how to solve the creative task, and at the same time verbalizing what she's doing, possibly involving children with open questions. In the first instances, the language is kept deliberately simple, near to children's experience. More technical terms or concepts are introduced later on. Then with a child, the interactive behaviors are then modeled directly with 1 or more children. Through a sufficient number of examples, the idea is examined in its various aspects, and the strategies and metacognitive strategies in accomplishing the task are made explicit. So the point is to let them understand what they're doing when they're creating this way. Modeling with a child is also a precious source of information for the teacher as to what difficulties or misunderstandings may emerge in children's reasoning. And then another possible phase is 2 children together being scaffolded by the teacher. So children's suggestions are taken as a starting point. The teacher works now with a child, a pair or a small group before the whole group. The teacher guides the small group through the various steps of the process, scaffolds them in making decisions, makes explicit the procedure and the relevant cognitive strategies for solving the problem. The rest of the group observes, usually interested, I would say, as they realize that something new is emerging right now. Importantly, having seen how some members of the group have dealt with the situation may let other children perceive the task as accessible. This is very important. So I'm showing it, but I'm the teacher. I'm showing it with a child, okay. But if two children are doing it, this is encouraging for the other children. So directly involving a few children in constructing an idea indeed helps the others understand more detailed aspects about how the creative task can be solved and prepares the group for the later phase of autonomous group action. And here is an example of a modeling phase where the idea is developed with a child and shared with the whole group. So this is in the 5th and last session in which we worked on this project, let's say. We developed it using this graphical notation. Actually, I call it notation with objects because it's not notes, but it's a symbolic representation of the time structure of the thing, of the temporal structure of what is to be done. And this way of working with objects as notation is very good because you can just manipulate, you can reorder them and find new structures. So we introduced notation with objects, inviting children to explore what kind of rhythm structures can come out. And we started with Tum Tum Cha Cha again, so that they could understand how we were working with the notation. And Valentina, my colleague, suggested Tun 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 Cha 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 Cha. So it's a 9, it's 4 plus 5. The issue here is to start from the notation this time. So the visual representation of the tempo of the strokes and to reconstruct the groove of that particular meter or rhythm. So whereas in the other cases where we're starting from the child's idea based on movement, we're starting here from the notation, from the visual representation. Here, the scaffolding function of the teacher's voices and gestures is essential because they support children in establishing and maintaining a continuous groove. And that's the video. Cha, cha, cha. Okay, and the idea of the pause of the rest at this point was the child. Yeah, okay. And why the modeling phase? I find that the modeling phase is very useful, especially in the case of creative open-ended processes where children do not have to reproduce any given content, but rather have to understand how to think in order to accomplish the task. I derived the pedagogical strategy of modeling from the cognitive apprenticeship approach. Some helpful instructional principles for this phase of work can also be drawn from research about worked examples from the fields of maths or science. An instructional strategy also rooted in a cognitive constructivist perspective. And background is just John Sweller cognitive load theory and so on. But the point is that an effective worked example provides a step-by-step procedure for carrying out a task. They present a problem-solving model for the learners to analyze and understand, and worked examples are a useful way to reduce cognitive load during the initial phases of skill acquisition. They facilitate the processing and development of the relevant cognitive schemata, which later on have to be used in the proper problem-solving phase, in that case, the actual creative group work phase. And worked examples should be designed so as to integrate into one consistent presentation all sources of information. Thus, multiple modalities of communication, such as music, movement, verbal language, forms of visual representation and notation, etc., are integrated in a coherent and effective way that facilitates understanding. Based on a sufficient number of examples, learners should be able to better identify the underlying concepts, principles, or thinking strategies common to the various examples and to apply them flexibly, that is creatively, to similar problems. In relation to the creative process we're examining more in detail here, the numerous ways of interpreting with movements and voice different metrical structures and making them visible by means of graphic notation helped children to effectively deal with the autonomous group work phase. They had understood, actually, the kind of creative problem they had to solve, the specific aspects and the sub-goals of the task, and the kind of outcomes that this composition activity might produce. Now they were just ready. And so after the modeling, we still have something to say about the task design, short digression. It is the responsibility of the teacher to devise the appropriate task in relation to the skills of the group, their level of preparation with regards to the specific contents of the task and the features of the context, at least in relation with this kind of creative tasks. At other points, we just gave children complete freedom to choose what they wanted. I would say we did that after they had a sufficient, or at the end of the project in the last sessions, last 10 to 5 sessions, because we thought they had enough practice, enough ideas, which had been gathered during the whole research project to be able to come up with their own ideas. So this is now, this table summarizes some of the main features of the task design. So you have a leading idea, which has been defined in the literature in different ways: rules, impulses, stimuli, provocations, prompts. Media, in this case, in elemental music education, we use movement, voice, or instruments. You can explore, improvise, and compose. These are also the different ways of acting creatively in music. The degree of openness is a very important characteristic. So you can have relatively close and structured tasks, and this is an example, or more open-ended and complex tasks, or completely free tasks. So in the project we were doing all this, but the example you have now is relatively closed, structured, very structured task. And this is a bottom-up process, which means we were combining elements, so tu or cha, to form a whole. And they were working rather collaboratively, I would say. So the group work phase now, then we sent children to say, okay, now you can invent your own structure. They formed 2 groups, the 3 boys and the 4 girls. And they started composing a thing, started just using objects to visualize what they wanted to do. They actually wrote their own notation and then had to practice it. Prior to group work, a series of decisions had to be taken, including choosing or preparing materials, taking the instruments, what instruments do you want to use and with whom. And this preparatory phase and many organizational and logistical choices involved in it may take more time than a few minutes, actually, but require much attention and patience on part of the teacher, because they are of crucial importance for the smooth and ordered prosecution of the activity. And then, eventually, we're getting to the creative group work phase. So after the modeling, coaching, and scaffolding phases, at this point, children need that the teacher's interventions fade. So the teacher has to stand back here and leave them alone and leave space for their independent work. This is the messiest phase of the process, exactly like the examples of Lucy before, mainly due to the loud, seemingly chaotic atmosphere in the room. In some cases, it may be difficult for the teacher to judge whether children are working effectively or not, or to follow what is happening in different groups. It might be important to ask the groups to rehearse their outcomes before sharing them with the whole group. What Fortley, an English researcher, defines a work-in-progress performance. And intervening, this is one of the points. Supporting or including. The greatest issue in this phase, as you see here, we're looking at them, listening to them, asking questions. So There is no exact rule of thumb in such a situation, but there is often a drive towards control on part of the teacher, the one which Lucy was referring to. But this drive towards control can be or should be contained in favor of a readiness to see what emerges from the groups and to let them work undisturbed. So you can do many different things. You can have children demonstrate. You should anyway try to grasp what they want to do, acknowledging what has been done. Oh, I see you've done this, or giving feedback, possibly, facilitating reflection and supporting decision-making, asking open questions. This is a very important strategy. Help them identify and choose among possible options. So I'm not telling them do this, but I'm asking them or presenting them with possible options. You might do this perhaps, or what else do you have in mind? Pointing out critical issues like, oh, this might be difficult, or I see, oh, what is not working here, or offering suggestions and providing direct examples. So you can choose to be more directive here or more open to see what happens and to ask them. In sum, observe, listen, ask questions. The main aim here is to support learners in the process of exploring different solutions, evaluating and selecting effective ideas without actually telling them what to do, and thus enabling them to maintain agency and ownership over their own creative process. That's the point. It's their thing, it's not mine, it's not ours. And then we are preparing for the presentation. So preliminary actions include arranging the physical layout of the groups, placing everybody in a safe space so that performers can see each other and can be seen by the audience, creating an atmosphere of concentration, summarizing again what is going to be seen, orientating the vision, maybe offering questions for the observers for the feedback of later on. And then each group in turn performs what they have invented. In some cases, they may still be this may be still a part of the process rather than a concluding presentation. In some cases, they're not ready. But this is okay, because what children have elaborated may sometimes not even be substantial, as they actually improvise in front of the audience, but the idea takes shape or is further elaborated through the whole group discussion. This happened many times. So children, and it's just process. It's not a performance in the strict sense. Huh? And now I want to show you the outcomes of the small group work, concluding the whole sequence of the activities on metrical structures. And we have here the boys. This is voice and gesture as a preliminary step, then they will do it with instruments. And they have the structure tun cha, tun cha, tun cha, cha. They used words, they chose themselves to use words. Chicho, 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 chicho. Look. I'm sorry.
Questo è il finale.
And this was the end. As you see here, okay. This is a 5-year-old child, last year kindergarten, and these are two second graders. So they are just university students in comparison to him. And what he's strongest, the strongest ones, as you've noticed, I think, and he's leading the whole thing. He's just trying to carry along. So at times it was frustrating. In more open composition or improvisation activities, he felt more at ease than in such a case where there is something which is pre-given or given by the group themselves, but given anyway, and he has to just execute it, because this implies skills that he hasn't fully developed, I would say, not yet at least. And these are the girls. And they have tune, 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 cha, cha, cha. Look at the hands.
Pronti, via, glin, 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 ta, ta, ta.
Different.
Glin, 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 ta, ta, ta. Glin, 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 ta, ta, ta. Glin, 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 ta, ta, ta.
Applausi.
I have, yeah, then with instruments. After the children have memorized and practiced the rhythm sequence with voice and body percussion, they're ready to transfer the same motor or vocal structure onto instruments. Here's the final outcome of the boy's instrumental transposition. The voice is used here as an orientation for the motor schema on the instrument. This is a form of multimodal integration. So this is about motor movement, instrumental sound, voice or syllables, visual information, the notation, and visual information also the interaction through gaze with the partners. And look.
Pronti, via.
You see that rather together. Of course, the youngest child might have some difficulties in remembering or in executing 4 times the thing, keeping the groove in a way. But that's, I would say, natural. It's well accepted. I think it's wonderful execution. And then now the girls changed their thing. So while transferring it onto the instruments, they expanded the structure and did this tune, 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 cha, cha, cha. That was the structure. And look. Let's see, they're doing. Yeah, so I can say it's a very good product. I would say what you will notice is that playing in sequence, the beat is not really there because each player has only a short part of the whole rhythmic string, and this requires, even for adults, a very good a lot of attention to keep really the time. So these 2 small pieces represent the arrival points of the whole theme metrical structures. And I say metrical structures because it's really a meter. This might be a 12 in a way, huh? Or a 12 beats sequence. Reflection after the performance, there might be no comments at all. It depends on the context, or instead there might be a detailed discussion of the outcome. The extent to which the comments are made depend on the time constraints or children's attentiveness at the moment, and the relevance of the considerations to be put forward. This phase is particularly important because it is here that, scaffolded by the teacher's questions and observations, children can evaluate what has been done, analyze the structure of the piece, ask questions for explanation, clarification. So who wants to ask what questions to whom? Praise what is in their view valuable, propose ideas for extension, metacognitively reflect on the creative thinking strategies used, and provide constructive feedback. In some cases, it might be important or interesting to invite them a small group to repeat their piece again in order to try out possible strategies which have been suggested, or to just let them enjoy a second go, especially if the first one did not go well for some reason, until they get to the ultimate performance. Through a second try, moreover, it is possible to check the extent to which the material was freely invented at the moment, or rather pre-established and fixed. That is, checking the invariant framework underlying the different renditions of the piece. And this is especially important in the case of young children, where the issue of memory, of retaining the information is there. So is the piece composed or half improvised or totally improvised? So these comparisons between 2 different renditions of the recordings of the piece are very helpful in understanding more in depth children's creative thinking processes. Of course, they can also be made later on through more thoroughly based on video recording. So I was also analyzing the videos and trying to understand what was different in the second time, what had evolved, and how were children behaving actually, what were they playing. So after a first round of presentations and comments, it may also be advantage to ask children to go back again in small groups and refine their pieces. Some of the videos shown here are actually recordings of the second and better rendition of the compositional idea. So this dialogic phase of guided reflection, feedback, and revision is essential for the increased effectiveness of children's group creative work. As a fundamental pedagogical perspective, giving voice to children through such evaluative conversations implies listening to the meanings, the perspectives, motives, ideas, and feelings that they might associate with their own music making. The focus is no longer not only on the created piece itself, so it's not on the product, rather it is on the social and creative learning and experience that children have through the group activity. So the point is trying to understand not just what they do, the behavior or the musical piece itself, but how they do it, how they conceived it, how they developed it, how they felt like doing it, how they collaborated with others. There's many aspects that you can address in such a reflection phase. And possible extensions, just to have a look at what this can lead to, you can have rhythm ostinati, rhythm phrases based on this, or pitch. If you use pitch, you can have elemental melodic and accompaniment structures, or rhythmic melodic ostinati, or polyphony, superimposing different strings of information that share a common beat, or others. So each creative phase of work is actually the beginning of a new phase of creative work, of course. The structure of the creative process, now summarizing, I go away from this particular example and I say, so what did I learn out of this experience, or the experience of my teaching with children? The phases of group creative process, which have been actually here presented in a linear fashion, might actually be more non-linear in the sense that the process, according to the kind of material ideas that you're working with, and depending on how the group is engaging in the activity, you may want to skip back and forth from one phase. So you might have microcycles nested within each of these phases. Reflection is not just at the end, you have reflection or feedback at each point in time. Or you may have a modeling during the small group work, or you can show ideas here. So this is just for analytical purposes, displayed as a linear sequence of actions, of phases, but actually it's much more intricated than that, I would say, in practice. So one other thing which is important, so that's why I'm using this kind of arrows to mean that each of these phases might be repeated or included in some of the other phases. And then also important is that we're talking about not just one session, but the structure of a creative process, which might extend over a longer period of time. In this case, it was five weeks. And the point is really how you organize a whole chain of successive steps and repeated cycles and sub-cycles of preparation, modeling, group work, presentation, and reflection over a number of sessions. And this is let's say the art of leading this kind of processes. So one more thing that I want to stress here shortly is that you're combining here music-related skills and knowledge, collaborative skills, so cooperative learning, and creativity-relevant skills. We're not just learning music, we're learning to work with each other, to negotiate solutions, to negotiate the decisions, and we're learning how we can be creative, how we think and how we act when we are creative. And yeah, one other thing I'd like to mention is the ethical value and the pedagogical value. So developing group creativity is a higher order goal in music and movement dance education. The activity of working and inventing with others, which is a central pedagogical strategy in the elemental music education, subsumes a range of cognitive functions such as remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Now here, obviously thinking of Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives, the cognitive ones. In their dynamic interactions with the ideas of others, children's independent and critical thinking is fostered. Beyond these cognitive aspects, collaboration in creative music making adds a further layer of relevant social skills, such as the ability to express and communicate ideas, build on each other's contribution, negotiate common solutions, and develop a sense of group identity in the co-construction of a joint outcome. Cultivating collaborative creativity through group work means giving children agency and ownership, as we said already, of their own learning processes, and helps them nurture the artist within them. Moreover, group creative activities tend to facilitate the active engagement and the inclusion of all children, as each member of the groups can self-define the extent and the nature of their participation within an open but appropriately structured framework. Thus, they foster a sense of autonomy, competence, and relatedness, which favors children's well-being. It's always a very, very satisfying and gratifying experience for children. And last but not least, the ethical values that can be associated to creative group work are acknowledging the person and her creative potential, promoting intersubjectivity and a dialogic attitude in the relationship with others, allowing for freedom alongside responsibility, encouraging diversity and multiplicity of perspectives, and finally, cultivating democracy. So thank you very much for your attention. And here you have some references. I don't know if you get the PowerPoints, but Zoe. So Zoe, I stop here.
Thank you very much, Andrea. It was wonderful to listen to you and Lucy as well. And thank you for guiding us through all these nice steps, how to work into collaborative creativity. So the floor is open for discussion. I will stop the